Credo Voices, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Awele Okibo, the CEO of Credo Advisory.
Bring women in because they constitute half of the human population in the world and because they are just as able, because there's talent there.
In a world where access to education and economic opportunity remains a privilege rather than a right, true empowerment often feels out of reach for many, especially young women in marginalized communities. According to the World Bank, women represent less than a third of the global tech workforce, with an even greater gender gap in STEM fields. Today's guest on Credo Voices is changing that narrative. We head to South Africa to meet Refilwe Ledwaba, founder of Girls Fly Africa. Refilwe opens doors for girls in underserved communities by offering mentorship, skill building, and funding in aviation and STEM fields. She's advancing Sustainable Development Goal 4, Quality Education, and Goal 5, Gender Equality. Join us for an empowering conversation on how Refilwe's dedication to mentorship, education, and advocacy reshapes women's possibilities in the skies.
Hi, my name is Refilwe, and thank you for having me. I am a founder and executive director for Girls Fly Africa. I'm also a qualified pilot. I have been flying for the last 20 years.
Refilwe, how does a young woman with a bachelor's of science in biochemistry and microbiology end up in the cockpit? How do you end up in aviation, please?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting story. Aviation was never a viable career choice for me. It was due to the fact that where I was from, I've never seen an airport. I've never seen somebody that looked like me flying. So I never thought about being a pilot. I wanted to become a doctor. And as such, I did pre-med, so studied for a Bachelor of Science degree, majored in biochemistry and microbiology with the hope of going to medical school. So up until that point, I never knew that I could become a pilot.
That's incredible. And then in becoming a pilot, and you consider yourself to be a social entrepreneur, right? And you have now established a foundation called Girls Fly Africa. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing and how you're changing the lives of, many young women?
Yeah, the reason why I started Girls Fly Africa was basically because of the reasons that I mentioned, not knowing about the industry and not knowing that it could be a viable career choice for me. So when I completed my pilot license, I then decided I wanted to do something that could educate young people, especially girls, about the viable career choice that are in the industry, and most importantly, how to go about it. So what the organization does is we identify talent, and mainly in the rural area. So I come from a semi-rural area, and I know the difficulties that these young girls have. We provide mentorship and training, leading up to an exit point that deliver trained and skilled professionals into the industry. So we take them from zero to either an airline first officer or an airline pilot or whatever that they aspire to be in the aviation industry by just looking at what are some of the challenges that they are likely to encounter in that journey and making sure that we eliminate those challenges.
Yes.
So not having any experience or not knowing about the industry to just not only becoming a pilot, we've got some of our young people that have become aerospace engineers, aeronautical engineers, aircraft maintenance engineer.
Okay, so let me rewind. Let's rewind. So you started wanting to be a doctor and you are now a licensed pilot.
Yes.
Let's fill in the gap between let's try and fill in the gap because it couldn't have been easy. You didn't just wake up and say, I'm going to be a pilot. And within a year, you got your license. Just walk us through the process.
So there were certain challenges that had led me to the aviation industry. So when I finished my undergrad degree, I had student loan. I come from a family of 7 and my mother was single. So as such, she didn't have enough money to take me to university. So I had to take a lot of student loans, and I still owed the university money. So what happens normally with South African universities, I don't know if it happens everywhere else, is when you owe the university money, they actually withhold your results and they withhold your certificate.
Yes. Yeah. That happens in other places. Absolutely. It's not typical to South Africa.
I couldn't find a job that related to what I had studied because I didn't have anything to show for it. But most importantly, I couldn't continue to medical school because then they needed
your certificates, yes,
to show that I had finished my undergrad degree. So I had to find a job. And the only thing that I had was my matric, my high school diploma on my matric results that I could use to get a job. So I heard that they're looking for cabin attendant at one of the local airline. And I thought, oh my word, I have worked so hard. I'm a qualified scientist, and there's this job because I didn't quite know what cabin crew do or what they did. I just thought they was coffee, but obviously they there's much more important of it, yeah. So yes. I was like, what? But I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go for it because I'm also a very curious person. So I went through the selection process for cabin crew, and I remember when I went for the interview, they then said to me, "Oh, do you know how to swim?" And I looked at them. I'm like,
"Oh, really?
Area. I don't know how to swim at all."
That is not the question to ask somebody who is, oh my gosh.
Exactly. I can't go to medical school, I can't swim. And I didn't think I got the job. And I was surprised. I actually got the job. And they said to me, while you're busy doing the training, we've booked for you at a local swimming pool so you can take swimming lessons. So by the time you finish the training, you'll be ready because there's an aspect of the training where they actually test. They call it teaching. They test your swimming ability so you can help other passengers, in the water should the aircraft need to ditch. So they paid for the license. So clearly they liked me as well, and they liked the interview. So as they say, my love affair with flying started. I never knew that such an industry existed. And once I got into the industry and I knew that somehow I'm going to stay in the industry. And I remember, and I was sitting at the back, and I was like, I actually want to be in front. I actually want to fly these aircraft. And it was quite so interesting as well because some of the pilots that were there, they'll always come to me. They're like, "You're so smart. You should be flying this aircraft." So you have all these people thinking that you could actually do this. Everything just sort of lined up. And one of the pilots of the company that I worked for then took me for an intro flight in a small aircraft. And as they say, the rest is
history. Refilwe, you're the accidental pilot. Your life work is now trying to get more girls in the same position, trying to get more girls to overcome the challenges that you had, and are now being intentional about getting their licenses and being real stakeholders in the aviation space. That's just amazing. It's incredible. Now I know Girls Fly Africa has a number of initiatives across Africa. But let me share some statistics with you, which you may already know. So according to the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, that's the FAA, the striking underrepresentation of women in aviation, as we all know. Women make up less than 20% of the workforce, but the largest gender gap is among leadership, senior leadership, professional pilots, maintenance technicians. Yes. So in a nutshell, about 5% of airline pilots are women. Yeah. So again, this speaks to the underrepresentation in STEM fields. Now, can you share a little bit about your initiatives? You have Fly for STEAM, you have your aviation camp. Tell me a little about it so we can get a sense of the programs and how these young girls are getting engaged in flying and in the field.
Well, I was laughing when you were mentioning the statistics because I was actually looking at them this morning. So, and I just want to take you back, like the global licensed female pilot in the last few years has only gone up from 3.6% to 4.0% globally. Wow. Aircraft maintenance engineers from 2.7 to 3.0%. globally. So it's, and I always say it's not even an African issue. It's not a South African issue,
Yes.
which is actually, which is quite interesting. So what we did when we, looking at the statistics, some of our experiences, we've engaged with a lot of people that have gone through the process and they're now qualified. We decided to take like a young person from a rural area, right? And we said, if that young person, we need to take them from where they are to the left-hand seat of an A380. And a left-hand seat of an A380 is a captain of an A380, the biggest.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
In the world. Or if we
Yes.
like a rural area girl to become an aerospace engineer or an astronaut.
Yes.
What are some of the things that we need to put in place for them to get them from there to be able to get to that point? And we identified 5 areas that we need to intervene. So the first area is they need to first know about the industry. I didn't know about the industry. Most of them don't know about the industry because nobody, there's no airport, there's nothing in the rural area. So they need to know about the industry. So that's where the program of Fly for STEAM comes in. So what we normally do as part of the outreach program, we will fly them to all these outskirts or rural area. Most of them, they've got this old strip. An old strip is like a dirty strip. As long as it's long enough for us to land, we will land. But what we do as well, it's normally 2 females. So number one, they start seeing people that look like them. And they start seeing those people actually landing the aircraft and actually getting out of the aircraft, because there's something else when you see like a pilot in uniform on Facebook, but if you actually see them landing that aircraft, it starts shifting that mindset. But the interesting part as well, there's a lot of perceptions in these areas as to what girls can do, and most of the time the barriers are even within the communities and within the families. But by us doing that and landing in those areas, we start removing, those biases, those perceptions that women or young girls can only do so much. I remember when I used to fly for the police as well, helicopters, and I used to work a lot in the rural area. And I made it a point that whenever we finished doing whatever work that we did, I will actually land in those communities. And you will see the fathers coming out and running and like, oh my word.
I can imagine. A woman is flying this helicopter. I can only imagine.
And that was the first thing that we identified that we needed to intervene. And then the second thing, and that's where the Fly for STEAM and other outreach programs that we do, came into effect. And then the second thing is, now that we've demystified this career, now, young girls know that they can become a pilot. How do we start building skills and capability? So most of these young girls, they've never even driven a car. Imagine now they want to become pilots, and you just take them from wherever they are, you put them in the aircraft. And the way the design of our training system is in such a way that it doesn't accommodate for that, because they never envisioned a young girl from a rural area aspiring to be a pilot. It used to be a certain person, and that's how they designed the system to be able to accommodate that average person then. And so they normally struggle because of coordination. Flying is coordination. And I remember personally when I started flying helicopters, I struggled to hover that helicopter. Not because I didn't have the skill or I couldn't. It was because of the way I grew up. I've never driven a car. The first thing that I started, using my hands and feet was a helicopter. So you can imagine.
You started flying before driving, Refilwe.
Yeah, so I got my flying license before my driver's license.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
This is such an incredible story. I'm so inspired. Against so many odds, you are really breaking barriers.
Yeah, it is. But also it gave me an opportunity to see how a person like me that comes from a similar background can be able, we can be able to design these programs. So the camp that we talk about, it starts building those skills and capabilities, because they start now working on the simulator. We start making sure that those hands start speaking to the legs and start speaking to the brain. That's the coordination that you need. So we put them in the simulator, they start taking their intro flights. So we start normalizing the industry during that camp. And the nice part about the camp is the mentors that are at the camp are professional professional pilots that look like them, that in most cases sound like them, and they come from similar background. So again, they start seeing people that look like them doing this wonderful thing. They go on the introductory flight with a female pilot. They sit on the simulator with a female pilot. So again, just re-emphasizing and just instilling in their mind that this can be done. That's what we do. So in that second phase, it's just building skills and capabilities. We've got job shadowing programs. We've got other workshops. We also have an aerospace center. We just built the first one. It's almost finished. Our home base at Grand Central Airport. So we just turned a hangar, which is normally used for hangaring aircraft, and we put flight simulators, and so we can, continue building those skills and capabilities. And then the third phase was, now that we've built the skills and capabilities, and now they finished school, they now want to get into the industry. One of the biggest challenge that I had when I did decide to get into the industry was how I was going to pay for it. And that was the biggest thing, because I used to only afford about 1 hour a month, and you need 200 hours to get your commercial license. And it was going to take me 10 years. So in that time, I wrote about, at some point, 200 letters that got to 300 companies. And it was one organization that got one of my letters. And that's how I got the funding. So we know that the young people that we work with, because of their socioeconomic background,
will not be able to afford it. Wow, yeah.
Then we partner with multiple organizations that give out scholarships. We've got our own scholarship program that we've also started as well. And through that, we're able to then fund their training.
It is a major barrier for anyone, really, even male or female, but major barrier for anyone interested in wanting to get into that field.
It is a major barrier because the amount that you have to pay, for example, to get a helicopter license, you will part with almost R1 million. That's somebody else's house or boat. Not even the real, I'm talking about even middle class cannot afford to. So we partner with a couple of multiple organizations, and we've also created our own fund so we can fund these young people and remove that barrier. So and we also now have our own academy. So we do some of the training ourselves. And one of the courses that we also have designed is a bridging course, again, to ensure that we set these young people for success. We don't believe in 99% pass rate. We believe in 100%. When they get into the program or the training program, we have designed it in such a way that we offer them not only the financial support, but the mentorship, the networks that they need to make sure that.
Yes, absolutely. You are providing support around the whole ecosystem, the funding, the mentorship, the training. Refilwe, exceptional.
Yeah, and I think the most important one, and of which we don't really talk about, is our industry is very network-based, because it's a very traditional industry and it's network-based. So it's who you were flying, especially the initial part when you had just finished training, for you to get the job, to actually build the experience. So because you need certain amount of hours to get to the airlines, you need certain networks. So for example, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I know pretty much a whole lot of people. And we've got a lot of, as well, people that had, that are in my situation that know a lot of people. So what we do as well as the next level, we now create a platform where we can make sure that these young people are also networked. So we partner again with airlines, we partner with organizations to make sure that they get the jobs. So we believe in, we provide the skill, but the job is waiting for you. For example, we trained about 30 drone pilots in the last 12, 13 months. All of them are employed.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
We have 2 young ladies that are just finishing their flight instructors. So they're going to teach people how to fly. They already have a job as first officers in the airlines. So we also, by partnering with the airlines, and as well by them trusting our method, and them seeing that method work,
yes,
they prefer some of our candidates to come into their airline. So we remove that whole network, the network thing. And I mean, as women, one of the biggest barrier is networks. We haven't been able to build. So we've incorporated that. And then the last part is the community that we also build, where there's continuous mentorship, there's continuous support. So we're not only training those young people to become, let's say, pilots. We want them to become training captains. We want them to be operational managers. You gave us statistics of women in leadership. They need these technical skills for them to be chief pilots one day. So we make sure that we continue to provide them with the necessary training and platforms so they can continue learning. So when the time comes and those positions open up, they're also qualified and competent to actually get to those positions. So in short, that's how our program works. And obviously we build in a lot of programs within that 5-phase approach that we have.
From a background in biochemistry to becoming South Africa's first Black female pilot and founding Girls Fly Africa, Refilwe Ledwaba's journey is an inspiring blueprint for young African women with big aspirations. She reflects on the challenges she faced as she trailblazed her way in aviation, which fueled her drive to establish a supportive network for others. Refilwe's mission isn't just about career pathways. It's about shifting mindsets and expanding opportunities for young women in STEM across the continent.
Can you walk me through what is your selection criteria for the girls? So you have a focus on rural areas, which I love, by the way. How do you select them, and how do you what are you looking for? You can't take all of them. What's the class size, for instance? How do you determine, the candidates that you will ultimately induct into your programs?
So our selection starts right from that 5-phase approach, the first approach, when we go out and we do like general outreach program. So from that general outreach program, so we also partner with multiple schools in a lot of provinces and countries, because partnering with schools is quite important. Because once the girls are in our program and they're still in high school, some of the critical support structure is the schools and their homes as well.
Yes,
so we make sure that we get that going. So from then onwards, that they start getting interested. There are certain expectations from us. So, for example, in that first approach, there'll be about, let's say, 1,000 girls that are interested, let's say, all over the country into the aerospace industry, right? And they're interested in STEM. So at that point, we're not expecting anything for them to choose. We just want them to show interest. There's an expectation from us in terms of how they need to perform in school. So there might be even in grade 8, so which means the first year of high school, or in primary, but there's certain expectations and we monitor them. So for us, we support them, but we need them to get certain marks for them to be able to move to a certain, the next level, which is the skills and capability. That's the camp. So for the camp, we normally take about 110. So you can imagine it's a very competitive selection
program. Yes.
From that 1,000 pool that were there, from the 100,000 that we've interacted with to 1,000, we then take those 100. But as well, just they are in different phases in school. So even if they don't make it like in grade 8, they still have grade 9 or grade 10 or grade 12 to be able to get into the camp.
And what's the age range, just for our international listeners? What's the age range do you normally select from?
From the camp where we start doing the serious selection, it's from about 15 years old to about 19 years. Before the camp, which is like that general outreach where we interact with probably close to 10,000 young people, there's no age. So we go from, we have had like 7-year-olds.
I love that. Yes, because you have to catch them early, Refilwe.
So, but for the selection now, we start at the age of 15, where they start attending the camps and we start building those skills and capabilities. And from the 100 of the camp and other program, we then take the ones that do well and they're interested in the industry, but they would have been exposed, and they'll tell us, I'm interested into becoming an airline pilot. I'm interested into becoming a military pilot. I'm interested to becoming a corporate pilot. And then we're able to then prepare them, because, for example, we can't train them for military pilots, but we can train them we can support them and prepare them for the selection process of the military aviator. So we focus mainly on maths and science, so pure maths and science. And we then start building skills and capability. But having said that, there are a lot of other careers in the industry that doesn't require maths and science, and you can still be in the aerospace industry. So we've got another sort of pipeline, but that is not as intense as the one, the pilot and the engineer pipeline, where at any time we can assist and support people that want to get into other aspect of the aviation industry. And not only other people, but even young boys as well. So that's another avenue where we open up and say, okay, we get a lot of requests. We'd like to do this. Can you assist us? We can still do that. But for the main program that requires technical expertise, we focus mainly on math and science.
Fantastic, Refilwe. Now, you've talked so much about, the how, the programs you have. What keeps going through my mind, as well, I'm sure parents, is the risk. How do you mitigate the risk in aviation? When I was younger, I used to love flying. I'm older and wiser now. Anytime I'm in a plane, I'm constantly just on edge. Yeah. So how do you communicate to rural families who are willing to let you instruct their daughters in flying? There is that risk. And you mentioned it. One of the questions they ask you is, do you know how to swim? How do you allay people's fears around that?
So I always say it's quite an interesting question, and it's a valid question because my mother was petrified as well. And I always give an example of how, in South Africa, we've got a problem of taxi drivers, right? On the ground. And that they are petrifying. That's scary. And we've got this road in South Africa called William Nicol. I'm petrified of that road. I'd rather be flying than finding myself driving on the road. But also, on a serious note, there are statistics that shows that flying is one of the safest mode of transport.
Yes, I know. But those the statistic and those the perception. And in my line of work, perception is reality. A couple of months ago, my 18-year-old asked me, Mommy, I'd love to, let's go bungee jumping. And I said, absolutely not. I'm very risk averse. So can you talk to me a little bit about, how you instruct the girls on, the risks, when they go up in the air for the first time? I mean, I can imagine they must be petrified. So tell me a little bit of how the transformation you see from that first flight of, white knuckle, they're really, very nervous, to where they're kind of getting their wings and they're able to now have the confidence to continue.
The training and what goes into that training is one of the most intensive training that you can ever have. And because of the risks that are associated with the flying. Yes. So there's a lot of briefing. So by the time you get into the air, you basically know exactly what is going to happen. So they will start with the ground school, which is the theory of flying. And they will go into the simulator. So in the simulator, you play around, and the simulator is on the ground. You play around with the aircraft. You play around with, the movement. And that's when they start being, comfortable that, this thing is actually not as hard. It's just a land skill that you need to do. And then there's other courses of, human factors that we make them understand how, with the flying, you as a pilot, how you play an integral role to mitigate some of those risks. And we have checklist. We've got processes. I'm sure we probably have, I know the medical profession, they actually took some of our checklist ways of doing things not to make mistakes. Yes. So things like those checklists, we've got CRM, crew resource management. So by the time you go up, you are trained to understand on how do I actually mitigate the risks that comes with flying. For example, one of the things is weather. We all know how weather is. Before you can even get up, the planning that goes into flying. It's not like you jumping into a car and say, what? You literally sit on the ground for a long time.
Yes.
That flight, I'm going from this place to this place. This is what the weather looks like. This is the amount of fuel that I'm going to need. The pre-flight, I don't remember. I'm probably one of the few people that check my tires, on the ground before I drive. Some of the things that I learned in the aviation industry, before you get airborne, you're going to do the checks on that aircraft. Enough fuel, enough oil. I mean, I've seen a lot of people get stuck on the side of the road because they've run out of fuel. In the air, you cannot, the checklist will not to be able to do that. So we start building that responsibility. And some of our program, we call them the pilot in command. So even at the age of 15, we start building that responsibility, because at some point, after a few hours of flying, like 20 hours, they do what we call a solo flight, where in that solo flight, they literally go on their own.
My goodness. Refilwe.
I loved it. The training is in such a way that you will be prepared for that solo flight. One of the other things that we normally do, especially from young people that are from the rural areas, and I know a lot of people like uniform, but what we normally do for the first few flights, I'll wear my jeans and I'll wear like sneakers and t-shirt. And I come to that level because uniform as well, it can be a barrier to them responding to you. So to make them comfortable. So I rock up in my jeans and uniform, like, are you ready? Should we go up? Let's go do this. So in that way, it gives them confidence. Because number one, I look like them. There's not that huge gradient that can be a barrier to them, taking that learning, especially in the beginning, where we're now doing that preparation course for them. And we get them to a certain point, right? And that point, then we start the training. Then we can, I rock up in uniform. I rock, but we've put them at a place where they're now comfortable, not scared. And having said that, in aviation, you need to be a little bit scared. Not scared into a point where you freeze, but scared into a point that you respect the process, you respect the flying, and you respect what you need to do before you actually get airborne. And my instructor used to say to me, the moment you say you know everything, and the moment you say I'm not scared of flying, then go and pack your uniform and retire and sit under a tree.
Oh my goodness. You are such an inspiration. I have to thank you for this incredible conversation. I would love to at some point come and visit your school, meet the incredible, brave young women that you're training. But before we finish, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. This is our rapid fire section. 3 questions, and just respond very quickly. Yeah? Are you ready?
Yes.
Flight instructor or commercial pilot?
Flight instructor.
Airbus or Concorde?
Oh, I would have loved to fly the Concorde, but having said that, A380 looks good as well.
And my last question, are you ready?
Yes.
Fly around the world or fly to the moon?
Fly to the moon. If we can make that happen.
Well, Refilwe, given your tenacity and your level of commitment, I would not put it past you for Girls Fly Africa to have a program very soon. But thank you for your time. Keep up the amazing work. And I look to maybe having another conversation in about a year to see where you guys are. How does that sound?
Oh, that sounds awesome. And thank you for, I love chatting about the work that we do. And thank you for the opportunity as well.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Refilwe Ledwaba's journey with Girls Fly Africa is a testament to the impact of creating opportunities where barriers once stood. Her vision transcends individual success, aiming to reshape an industry and empower young women from underserved communities. Through her 5-point approach, not limited to funding, mentorship, and skills training, she equips girls with the tools to thrive in aviation and STEM fields. With her extensive experience, Refilwe ensures that trainees don't just receive training, but find avenues into meaningful careers. As we reflect in Refilwe's work, let's remember her mission as one of empowerment, visibility, and resilience. It's a powerful call to invest in young women's potential and to advocate for a world where every girl can dream and fly. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious and keep believing in the power of your voice. This is Awele Okibo, signing off for Credo Voices.